I just got back from Borneo and I have so much to talk about. So it was amazing. It was like one of the best places I've been to. But after coming home, I was having a little think about the whole trip, and there are some things that are really good to know that people do not tell you. So let's dig into them. If you're new here, my name's Claire. I make videos about bucket list destinations and overland journeys, so do follow along. So the first kind of lie, myth about Borneo is that people kind of talk about it as if it's just a little hop from Peninsular Malaysia. And I think it's important to differentiate them in your mind. Borneo is actually like a 2.5 to 3 hour plane ride from Peninsular Malaysia. And Borneo is also 3 countries. It is part of Malaysia, part of Indonesia, and the entirety of Brunei. So it is a good idea to like talk about Malaysian Borneo if you're going to Malaysian Borneo. And just remember that it isn't that close to Peninsular Malaysia, which is the Malaysia on the Southeast Asian mainland. Now, the fact that the flights are longer also means that the flights are more expensive. They're not crazy prices. It was about 60, 70 pounds, so about 80 to 90 euros or dollars to get from Kuala Lumpur to Kota Kinabalu. But it is worth bearing that in mind because they are going to be more expensive than if you're, for instance, taking an internal flight in Peninsular Malaysia. The next myth that I've heard about Malaysian Borneo is that it isn't safe. Malaysian Borneo is super safe. Most destinations are much safer than destinations in Europe. Kota Kinabalu felt completely secure. Obviously, like anywhere, it is important to like keep your valuables safe, make sure you're not flashing anything around. But generally, I did feel extremely safe there. There is a part of Malaysian Borneo that is considered unsafe by the FCDO, and it is actually, I think it's an orange, an amber warning, which means against all but unnecessary travel. So this is the British guidance. I know that Australian guidance has similar. US guidance is slightly less, so it depends where you're from. But the British guidance is that these islands shouldn't really be visited unless you absolutely have to. This is because in the past, there have been kidnappings from the islands. This is due to an extremist group based in the Philippines who have employed pirates to then kidnap people from these islands, which sounds very scary, I know. But there haven't been any incidents in quite a long time, particularly incidents involving tourists. However, these guidances are still in place, which means that it may impact your travel insurance. I actually got insured through Safety Wing, and because they use the US guidance, I could have been insured in these areas, but you may not be. So do have a look at that if you're planning on going to the eastern islands of Malaysia. This includes Semporna and that whole area, and any islands off the eastern side, not the islands off Kota Kinabalu. And do have a read about the danger situation on the islands. Like I say, it was a long time since anything happened, but do have a read and see what you are comfortable with. We actually decided not to go to these islands, not because it was dangerous, but for another reason, which I'm going to get into a little bit later on in the video. I might do a whole video about the safety situation in Borneo because I do feel like it's the biggest like myth that there is, because honestly, in general, it is a very, very, very safe place. The next lie or myth that you need to make sure that you don't go in expecting to be true is that you're definitely going to see an orangutan in the wild. Sadly, there is no guarantee. You will definitely see an orangutan if you go to the conservation centre, the Sepalok Orangutan Rehabilitation Centre, I believe it's called, because they are there and they're there in their natural habitat. It's a really great programme. I actually did do a fundraiser on my jungle video about seeing orangutans in the wild, where I'm donating 20% of my ad revenue on that video to the Orangutan Conservation Centre. So if you are able to, please do give that video a watch, and that really helps raise a bit more money for them, because they really work very, very hard to protect orangutans, like orphans or injured orangutans that they found in the wild that can't survive there, and they bring them into the sanctuary. If they can release them, they do. If they can't, then they're given a permanent home at the sanctuary, which is their natural habitat, so it's a very comfortable place for them. So they're doing great work, and you will see an orangutan if you go there. If you go onto the Kinabatangan River, sadly, this used to be a really good place to see orangutans. Our guide was telling us that he used to see them every day, and now he sees them maybe every 3-4 days. It's tragic. Like, there's only, I think, less than 100,000 left in the wild, which is crazy and so so sad. You have the best chance of seeing them on the Kinabatangan River. So I definitely recommend going to the Kinabatangan River. Go to Uncle Tan's. We had a great time at Uncle Tan's wildlife jungle camp. It was incredible. And we did see an orangutan, but we only saw it at the end of our very last boat trip. So there are no guarantees. But the guides there are incredible, and they will do everything they can to try and make sure that you see one, while also treating the landscape, the animals, etc. very, very respectfully. I did feel like they were a very good company. The next kind of myth about Borneo is that you need to realise that the diving isn't going to be incredible everywhere you go. So the Semporna area, which is the area that I mentioned before, it is the area where there used to be quite a lot of pirates. These days, much, much less. There's a lot more Malaysian border defence, and yeah, it's just a lot less likely to happen. But there is still a minuscule chance, but there is a chance of things happening pretty much anywhere. So depends on what your risk aversion is, whether you go there. But that is where the excellent diving is. Now, we didn't go there. That was largely because it was looking to be more expensive, and we weren't all divers. So for many of the places around Semporna, including Sipadam, which is very, very famous, you have to have your advanced qualification to dive. If you're on a diving trip, then by all means, go there, do the amazing diving and everything. But I did read that there wasn't much else to do other than diving. So we decided to go to diving around Kota Kinabalu and Gaia Island area, which there is a marine park there, but the diving was okay. It was all right. The first dive, the visibility was very bad. It had rained a lot before. There was a lot of trash in the sea, which was very sad to see. But we did see some coral. We saw a shark. We saw a turtle. So it was worth doing, but it wasn't quite the bucket list diving that you'll see in the Semporna area. However, I would only really recommend going to the area if you're planning to dive a lot and do a good few days of diving, because it is a little bit long to get to. You have to fly to Tawau, I don't know how it's pronounced, and then get transferred to Semporna, or you can travel by car from Sipadam, which takes about 6 hours. And then when you're there, it's actually quite expensive, especially if you want to stay on the islands. I've heard Semporna isn't the nicest city, so if you want to stay somewhere nicer, then you need to go out to the islands. And I've heard that does get expensive there, and it's a bit complicated to get permits. So all in all, if you're not on a diving holiday, then it does get a bit complicated down there. And then there is also the danger factor, which is just important to be aware of. Okay, so before I went to Borneo, people told me that the food wasn't very good there. I thought the food was amazing there. So this is my next lie that people told me about Borneo, was that the food wasn't as good as Malaysian mainland. Aside from Penang, Georgetown, where the food is just incredible, I thought the food was just as good in Kota Kinabalu. And around Borneo, we had lots of really tasty noodle dishes. We had Chinese food. We had really good food in the jungle. Uncle Tan's sorted us out when it came to food. And I'm vegetarian, and I found it really easy to eat veggie food. So yeah, maybe there's not quite as much diversity, but I definitely wouldn't have thought of it as somewhere where the food wasn't good. And the other thing that a lot of people told me about Kota Kinabalu was that there was nothing to do there. And again, I think there was quite a lot to do there, and I think we needed more time there, really. So we went to see the mosque. That was really cool, really beautiful mosque. Went to the Api street food market, which is on weekend evenings. But there's also loads of viewpoints and watchtowers and things that we didn't make it to that I really would have liked to go to. And I also heard there were some cultural villages as well, a short drive outside of Kota Kinabalu. So yeah, I think there was plenty to do. And this leads me on to my next point. Now, while I said the diving is excellent in Semporna, I don't think you have to go to Semporna to see really nice islands. So we went out to Gaia Island, which is just a 15-minute boat ride from Kota Kinabalu. And honestly, I thought it was stunning. We stayed in these overwater bungalows. I've got a video on them, so do check that out. And it was just so special. It felt like we were in the Maldives. The water there was quite clean. I think the staff who work at the hotel, I think they work quite a lot to make it clean. It was just incredible. Went on a little hike, saw a nice viewpoint. If you want a beautiful tropical island to chill out on, then Gaia Island is honestly really, really special. And my last thing to know that I don't feel like people talk about a lot is that people don't really talk about how you can really see the signs of deforestation in Borneo, and it is really sad. So when we were on the Kinabalu River, the river itself was super muddy and there were loads of logs floating in it. And this is to do with like deforestation, the mud, like the soil isn't able to stick together because the trees aren't there, so it's falling into the river. The branches and everything, obviously they're being left behind, so they go into the river, and it is really sad. So you can really see visually like how much the rainforest has been destroyed, and you can see, you know, you see all the plantations, and then you see where it becomes like wild rainforest, and you just think this all used to be wild rainforest. It is really sad to see. We also saw, like, on the Kinabalu River quite a lot of bottles and things, like plastic pollution, and it just made me like never want to use plastic again, and it's really difficult to, like, anywhere in the world. So yeah, just a bit of food for thought. Like, obviously on a personal level there's not a huge amount we can do about it. It did give me sort of more of a motivation to try and avoid palm oil and things and limit my plastic use. But yeah, it was very sad to see. The resort that we stayed at on Gaia Island, Guyana Marine Resort, they were really good. They were a plastic-free resort. They did a lot of work into restoration of giant clams, and yeah, they were really impressive. So I would definitely recommend staying with them if you want to stay somewhere that's more sustainable, because yeah, they were exceptional. So I think that is about everything. Like I say, I absolutely loved Borneo, but I just wanted to note a few little things that I hadn't heard talk about, both good and bad things. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Drop me a comment and let me know your thoughts. And I might do a whole video about safety, because I feel like it's quite interesting to talk about, and maybe I can explain a bit more about why we decided not to go to Semporna in the end. And yeah, stay tuned for more videos. I'm going to do a whole like Brunei guide as well soon. So I will hopefully see you there. Bye!